And welcome back to Chicago Bulls Insider. Today, we are talking about the most recent contract update around Josh Giddey. And so we'll be talking about the most recent news there. Next, we're going to be talking about trade buzz around Ayo Dosunmu as the Los Angeles Lakers have been linked to Ayo. And so we'll be talking about that and more. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Buzelis slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. So make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider families. We talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And let's start with the latest here around Josh Giddey and his contract situation. And so if you want to go read about this, you can go over to Bleacher Report. And within this article, you're going to see a quote from Casey Johnson and what he had to say on his Fast Break show. And so just to put a little bit more context to that. And so you can go into there, you can see the video for yourself. About a minute 30 is where he starts to talk about the Josh Giddey situation. He also, too, talks about gearing up for the Summer League as he's sharing some insights with Modest Buzelis. And then also, too, he's talking about Noah Isingay as well. So definitely check that out. But not to get too far off the point, going into Josh Giddey in this situation. And so before we jump into what Casey Johnson said there, he does start off by talking about the fact that the market has dried up at this point in time, saying that the Brooklyn Nets were the team that could really make a serious run at Josh Giddey. But now that they've made the trade here for Michael Porter Jr., essentially that takes them off the board. And just really talking about the reality of the matter here for restricted free agency here and just how the team has power. And so we'll see what happens from there. And so just to give you some insight before we go into it, he does also say that he does expect for the Chicago Bulls and Josh Giddey to get a deal done. So he fully expects that Josh Giddey will be back with the Chicago Bulls. But at this point in time, playing the slow game because there hasn't been a lot of movement for restricted free agency. He does reference Jonathan Kuminga as well. Like just right now, it is a bit of a stalemate there as far as restricted free agency. But this is what Casey Johnson had to say in regards to the $30 million a year. Because remember, we have saw the reports about that he's looking to get $30 million a year. And so this is what not Josh Giddey, but this is what Casey Johnson had to say about that number that Josh Giddey might be seeking here for his contract. And so he says that I don't have particular numbers other than to say that Giddey, a $30 million a year price tag that's been well documented in the media and out there since last fall when the rookie contract was discussed, has never crossed my radar, Casey Johnson says there. And he says, I've never heard the Bulls mention that number, so I would not expect Giddey to sign a $30 million a year deal. And so once again, you can go over to this article and you can take a look at that video as well for yourself. And so, with that being said, look, I think that we're right here into a situation where it is a bit of a stalemate and it is going to be a waiting game. And I do think that something's going to get done. However, I think that as time goes along, there's no offer sheet there. You just wonder, what is that final deal going to look like per year for Josh Giddey, and how many years is it going to look like? Because if $30 million is off of the table, like I wonder what that's going to look like, again, for the long term here. I do think that the Chicago Bulls do want to build with Josh Giddey, and I think that Josh Giddey does want to come back to the Chicago Bulls. I think that he really found himself, especially towards the end of the season. And look, man, I think it would be interesting if he has to come back and he has to play for that qualifying offer, because if he does have to play for the qualifying offer, I'm not sure that that is going to result with him signing a long-term deal with the Chicago Bulls after that. Because remember, he can play on the qualifying offer of $11.1 million. And going back to something that Bobby Marks had said, that look, over the last 10 years, there's only been 5 players who have played on the qualifying offer. And so that just lets it can happen, but it is pretty rare. And then just to give you a little bit more insight into that, if you do go onto the qualifying offer, this does mean that Josh Giddey can veto the trades there, because, if he does waive that and then he were traded, he would be going ahead and giving up his bird rights there, which essentially means that a team cannot exceed the salary cap to sign you there. And so wouldn't want to do that. But he does have some control there, and he absolutely can just pretty much go anywhere he wants to after that year if he decides to go ahead and bet on himself with the qualifying offer. And so right now, it looks like that it's just in a bit of a stalemate right now, just a situation where there's not really any progress. It's been pretty slow here across the board for restricted free agency, but just wanted to go ahead and give you that update. You can take a look at, again, what Casey Johnson had to say on his Fast Break show, because he does drop some great insights about Modest Buzelis, and then also to Noah Esenge as they prepare for the Summer League coming up here. And so next, I wanted to jump into the next thing here, and it is the buzz around Ayo Dosunmu. And so if you've not got a chance to see this, you can pop over to Clutch Points and you can take a look at this. And so this is a pretty good article here, as it is talking about the Los Angeles Lakers and just really how active that they plan to be as far as still making some moves here. So a great read as far as them trying to get under, one of the tax aprons here, and then also to just trying to free up a roster spot. But Ayo Dosunmu is mentioned here. And so, just to give this a little bit more of a full context, not going to read through the first passage here, but it talks about this, that according to sources here, that the Lakers plan on pretty much going ahead and reigniting trade talks as the entire league embarks upon Las Vegas for the NBA Summer League. So just pointing to the fact that the Lakers are looking to still get active with trade talks. But this is what it says after that passage here. And it says that previous trade targets include Andrew Wiggins, Robert Williams, among others, and a couple new names have garnered some attention given how the rest of the offseason has played out to this point. Sources say that Matisse Thybulle and then also to Marcus Smart, most teams are watching to see if there's going to be a buyout for either of them. And then it says that Ayo Dosunmu and others are names the Lakers have had preliminary conversations with teams about availability and price, though no offers have been made there. All right. And so, this lets you know that, look, the Lakers have at least, picked up the phone to check and see what's going on here with Ayo Dosunmu. It does tell you that no offers have been made, but hey, they're checking to see, hey, what would a deal, maybe look like? What's the price point here as you see it for yourself? And so, this kind of goes into, what we had been hearing before around Ayo Dosunmu, is that there had been more, chatter around him than Coby White. He officially does have his name linked to a team now. And so, I think that this is going to be an interesting situation, because I'm not in the camp of moving on from Ayo or Coby White at this point in time, but I do think that the Bulls are going to have to make a decision, because with that 140 rule, I don't think that either player is going to sign that extension. I think that it would be way under market value for both of those players. And so I understand why they would not sign that. They signed a team-friendly deal, and they really outperformed that. And there's the chance that if the Chicago Bulls go ahead, they don't make a move, that both of these players have excellent years, and then you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do as far as paying these guys, because they are unrestricted free agents. There is no restricted free agency for either of these players at the end of the year. Both of these players can go. And so the Bulls have to make a decision. And with Ayo Dosunmu, look, he's coming in at $7.5 million here, so $7.5 million, and 12.3 points per game, 4.5 assists, 3.5 rebounds, 0.4 with the blocks, 0.9 with the steals. We talked about this before, 78.5% from the free throw line. I know it was a tough year for him shooting the three-point shot at 32.8% from three. I'm not sure, how much, the shoulder injury and stuff like that impacted him. Plus, it was a new offense, and he also had to adjust to the fact that, look, you're coming into a different situation. I'm sure, within this offense and defensively, what he was going to need to do last season was probably different from what he faced the year before. And so hopefully, this year, just like Coby White, he can go ahead and find a role that is constant, and just he can take off as well. He shot 49.2% from the field. I love the fact that he's a one-man fast break. I love what we get defensively with Ayo Dosunmu and how he can switch and things like that. And I said this before, when you're talking about identity and you're talking about changing the identity of your team and getting it to a winning situation, I think that both Ayo and Coby White are both players that change the identity for the Chicago Bulls. And I just think that you're going to see more consistency this season with Coby White. I think that he picks up from a very good season last year, especially the way that he ended it. And I think Ayo coming back hungry, he's going to take on a little bit more of an assertive role here, especially with the situation that happened with Patrick Williams. I think that Ayo might have to be depended on even more, to help this team as far as perimeter defense. And so that means that he's going to get some more opportunities. But, just going back to this Lakers situation here, again, it just says that, they've checked in. There's not anything that's been on the table or anything like that. But when you just look at the roster and you just look at the situation and what it possibly could be, it's interesting because when you look at the Lakers roster, again, if you were matching money for money, again, you see that Ayo's coming in at $7.5 million. And then you're looking at the contracts here. I'm not sure how a deal like that would get done. Obviously, you see the RS there for recently signed. So DeAndre Ayton, and then also to Jake LaRavia, I think are definitely off of the table. But you wonder, could a player like Dalton Connect, who they've actually technically traded before, could he be somebody that he would, maybe be on the table in an Ayo Dosunmu type of deal? And also, too, you have to look at these other salaries as well. But, I think it would be interesting if the Chicago Bulls did end up getting into trade talks. But once again, I am not in the camp of moving on from Ayo Dosunmu. But you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking. Would you be interested in entertaining a trade of Ayo to the Lakers? And this is if this were something that was definitely something that was going to happen right now. We just hear that the Lakers definitely have some interest. And then also, too, let me know what you guys are thinking as far as Josh Giddey and the recent contract situation here. Once again, just going back to this, you can find this in this Bleacher Report article. And you can also watch the video, but this is the quote from the video in which you can see that Casey Johnson is saying that so I would not expect Giddey to sign a $30 million deal. So he's not hearing $30 million a year as the possible situation with his contract. And so you guys let me know. And as we always say, look, go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.